In the blistering heat of a Japanese summer, as the world teetered on the edge of apocalypse, a young engineer named Tsutomu Yamaguchi stepped into the shadow of history's deadliest fire. It was August 6, 1945, and the sky over Hiroshima cracked open like the wrath of a vengeful god. A blinding flash, brighter than 1,000 suns, tore through the morning calm, and in that instant, one man's ordinary day became a descent into hell. But this was no ordinary survivor. This was the man who would defy death not once, but twice, cheating the atomic fury that leveled cities and shattered souls. Listen closely, for his story is a whisper from the ashes, a testament to the fragility of life and the unyielding grip of fate. Tsutomu Yamaguchi was born in the port city of Nagasaki on March 16, 1916, into a world already scarred by conflict. As a boy, he dreamed of building ships, not destroying lives. He joined Mitsubishi Heavy Industries in the 1930s, rising as a talented marine engineer and draftsman, sketching the sleek lines of oil tankers that fueled Japan's imperial ambitions. But Tsutomu harbored no love for the war machine. He opposed the conflict that had engulfed his nation, watching in quiet despair as Allied forces sank those very tankers he designed. The war's toll weighed heavy on his heart. In moments of deepest gloom, he even contemplated an honor killing for his family, slipping them sleeping pills to spare them the shame of defeat. Little did he know the true horror was yet to come, a cataclysm that would test his will to live beyond imagination. By the summer of 1945, at just 29 years old, Tsutomu was a husband and father, married to Hisako, with a young son, Katsutoshi, waiting back home. Duty called him away on a 3-month business trip to Hiroshima, where he labored over blueprints in the Mitsubishi shipyard. The work was grueling, the air thick with the metallic tang of industry and the undercurrent of wartime tension. But August 6 promised relief. It was his last day. He packed his bags, said farewell to colleagues Akira Iwanaga and Kuniyoshi Sato, and headed for the train station with a spring in his step. Fate, however, had other plans. Midway there, a nagging realization struck. He'd forgotten his hanko, the traditional stamp essential for official documents. Cursing under his breath, he turned back toward the shipyard, oblivious to the invisible threads pulling him toward destiny. The morning sun hung low, casting long shadows over the bustling streets. Tsutomu walked briskly, about 3 kilometers from the city's center, when a distant hum caught his ear. He glanced up, spotting a silver speck in the sky, an American B-29 bomber, the Enola Gay, gliding like a predator. 2 small parachutes drifted down, and then, nothing prepared him for what followed. A magnesium flare of light exploded across the horizon, searing his retinas, turning day into an infernal blaze. The air pressure slammed into him like a tidal wave, ripping him off his feet and flinging him through the air. He crashed into the dirt, ears ringing with a deafening roar that shattered his eardrums. Temporary blindness cloaked his world in darkness, his skin blistering from the intense heat, burns etching deep into the left side of his body. "I think I fainted for a while," he would later recall, his voice trembling with the memory. "When I opened my eyes, everything was dark and I couldn't see much. It was like the start of a film at the cinema before the picture has begun. Chaos erupted around him. Buildings crumpled like paper, fires leaped from the ruins, and a massive mushroom cloud billowed upward, blotting out the sun. Ash fell like black snow, choking the air with the acrid smell of burning flesh and molten metal. Tsutomu staggered to his feet, disoriented, pain shooting through his ruptured ears and scorched limbs. A woman who'd been walking nearby moments ago was gone, vaporized in the blink. He clawed his way toward an air raid shelter, heart pounding with raw terror. Inside, he huddled with strangers, their faces masks of shock and agony. Skin peeled from bodies in gruesome sheets, eyes stared blankly into the void. The night dragged on in that underground tomb, the ground trembling with aftershocks, screams echoing like ghosts. Tsutomu thought of Hisako and little Katsutoshi, the ache of separation twisting like a knife. Would he ever see them again? The suspense gnawed at him, every breath a battle against despair. Dawn broke over a city transformed into hell. Hiroshima lay in ruins, 80,000 souls snuffed out in an instant, tens of thousands more doomed to slow, agonizing deaths from radiation. Tsutomu emerged into the devastation, reuniting with Akira and Kuniyoshi, who had somehow survived the initial blast. Together, they navigated the nightmare landscape, twisted bridges, rivers clogged with floating corpses, the air heavy with the moans of the dying. At one crossing, Tsutomu plunged into the water, swimming through a macabre sea of bodies, their lifeless eyes staring up at him. His burns screamed in protest, but survival drove him onward. They reached the train station, a fragile beacon amid the rubble, and boarded a crowded car packed with bandaged survivors. The overnight journey to Nagasaki was a blur of pain and exhaustion, the rhythmic clack of rails a mocking lullaby. Unbeknownst to Tsutomu across the ocean, President Truman had just announced the bomb's existence, threatening more rain of ruin. But in that rattling train, Tsutomu clung to hope, whispering prayers for home. He arrived in Nagasaki on August 8, a ghost of himself. At the hospital, a doctor and old schoolmate barely recognized him through the bandages and swelling. Even his mother recoiled, mistaking him for a specter. Hisako and Katsutoshi embraced him with tears, but the joy was fleeting. His wounds festered, fever brewed beneath his skin. Yet duty called once more. On August 9, despite the agony, Tsutomu dragged himself to Mitsubishi's Nagasaki office. He had to report, to warn them of what he'd seen. In a conference room, surrounded by skeptical colleagues, he began his tale, the flash, the boom, the city erased in a heartbeat. His supervisor scoffed, "You're crazy. How could one bomb destroy everything?" Tsutomu's frustration mounted, his voice rising in urgency, and then, at 11:02 a.m., as if the universe conspired in cruel irony, the room flooded with that familiar white light. The sky split open again. A second mushroom cloud erupted, this time over his hometown. The B-29 boxcar had dropped Fat Man, a plutonium beast more powerful than Little Boy, detonating 3 kilometers away. Shockwaves shattered windows, glass raining like deadly confetti. Tsutomu dove under a desk, heart slamming against his ribs, the terror of recognition flooding him. "I thought the mushroom cloud had followed me from Hiroshima." He later confessed, the words heavy with disbelief. The building groaned, debris crashed around him, but the reinforced structure and Nagasaki's hills shielded the room. His colleagues, fresh from his Hiroshima story, mimicked his dive, surviving the impossible. Emerging into the smoke-filled air, Tsutomu raced home, dread coiling in his gut. Was his family gone? The streets were a mirror of Hiroshima, crumpled homes, scorched earth, the wails of the injured piercing the haze. He burst through the door to find Hisako and Katsutoshi alive, though shaken. Hisako had been out foraging for burn ointment when the blast hit. She'd pulled their son into a tunnel just in time. In a twist that chilled him to the core, Tsutomu realized, if not for his Hiroshima injuries, she might never have left the house, and they could have perished. The double strike plunged Tsutomu into a vortex of suffering. Radiation coursed through his veins like poison, stripping his hair in clumps, igniting fevers that burned hotter than the blasts. He vomited endlessly, wounds turning gangrenous, his body a battlefield of unseen wars. Huddled in a shelter with his family on August 15, he heard Emperor Hirohito's surrender broadcast crackle over the radio. "I had no feeling about it," he admitted years later. "I was neither sorry nor glad. I was seriously ill, eating almost nothing, hardly even drinking. I thought I was about to cross to the other side. Delirium gripped him, visions of fire and ash haunting his dreams. Yet, against all odds, he endured. The bombs had claimed nearly 250,000 WWII lives across both cities, but Tsutomu Yamaguchi lived a singular miracle amid the multitude. The years that followed were a quiet war of their own. Tsutomu worked as a translator for Allied occupation forces, teaching school to rebuild shattered mines, then returning to Mitsubishi to design tankers once more. He and Hisako welcomed two daughters, Toshiko and Nayako, building a family from the ruins. But the radiation's shadow lingered. Hisako, exposed to the toxic black rain in Nagasaki, battled lifelong illnesses, succumbing to kidney and liver cancer at 88. Their children suffered too. Kat Tsutoshi died of cancer at 59, the girls plagued by health woes linked to parental exposure. Tsutomu himself lost hearing in one ear forever, developed cataracts and leukemia, his body a canvas of scars. For decades, he internalized the trauma, writing poetry in secret. Verses like, "And the river flowed as a raft of corpses," channeling the river of bodies he'd swum through. The reason I hate the atomic bomb is because of what it does to the dignity of human beings. He confided, his words a raw indictment of the dehumanizing horror. In his twilight years, purpose ignited. At 80, Tsutomu broke his silence, viewing his survival as destiny. He authored a memoir, Ikasaraturu Inach, A Life Well Lived, and featured in the documentary Twice Survived, screened at the United Nations. There, his voice trembled with emotion. "I can't understand why the world cannot understand the agony of the nuclear bombs. How can they keep developing these weapons?" In 2009, at 93, Japan officially recognized him as the sole Niju Hibakusha, though 165 others shared similar fates. "My double radiation exposure is now an official government record," he said softly. "It can tell the younger generation the horrifying history of the atomic bombings even after I die." Meeting filmmaker James Cameron, he urged a movie on nuclear perils, declaring it their shared fate. Tsutomu Yamaguchi passed on January 4, 2010, from stomach cancer, his 93 years, a beacon of resilience. He had walked through the bottom of hell twice, emerging not broken, but burdened with a message. "Having experienced atomic bombings twice and survived, it is my destiny to talk about it," he proclaimed. His story whispers of the thin line between life and oblivion, the twists of forgotten stamps and skeptical bosses that spared him, the emotional scars that never fully healed. In a world still armed with nuclear shadows, his legacy begs us to listen. And so, as we reflect on this extraordinary tale of survival and sorrow, let it stir something deep within you, the fragility of peace, the weight of memory. If Tsutomu's unyielding spirit moves you, honor it by liking this video, sharing your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribing for more stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Because in remembering him, we keep the flames of hope alive against the darkness.